Hello, everybody. It is Sunday, February 9th, 2025. That's correct. Welcome to episode 106 of the Old Mage MTG podcast with your hosts, Old Mage Steve and Old Mage Alex. Thank you so much for joining us. We're discussing a classic pre-modern era green deck today because I love pre-modern era green decks. But before we do so, I have a few other issues to get to. I'm going to start by saying, while you're here, please subscribe to our channel on YouTube or on whatever podcast app you use. You can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. I personally think the platforms that have video are the best for viewing our podcast because we do show a lot of different stuff on the screen. You can see our video on YouTube, of course, and then on Spotify. Spotify has a video option now. Second, I want to say, if you hear any cards today that you'd like to add to your spell book, please make your next purchase on tcgplayer.com. You can purchase those cards from TCG Player using our affiliate link. You can find our affiliate link in the episode description below. And then third, I have a follow-up to last episode, Alex. So let's start with a follow-up to last episode. Last episode, I spent some time talking about a card that I just bought from Legends. That card is called Floral Spuzzem. It is a summon Spuzzem. I think it is the only summon Spuzzem in the game of Magic the Gathering. It's 3 colorless, 1 green, 2/2. If Floral Spuzzem attacks an opponent and is not blocked, then Floral Spuzzem may choose to destroy a target artifact under that opponent's control and deal no damage. I was talking about this card in the context of a potential combo with Mage MTG. I was wondering if I could run this in my old school mono green deck with Mage MTG. Everybody pretty much knows Mage MTG by now, but if you don't remember, you can tap it. Target attacking creature becomes untapped. This creature neither deals nor receives damage as a result of combat. So my thought was maybe I could attack with the Floral Spuzzem, use Mage MTG to remove it from combat before it's blocked. It is then not blocked, and then I would allow the Spuzzem to choose to destroy some target artifact on under my opponent's control. I say allow the Spuzzem to choose because when you play the Spuzzem, the controller of the Spuzzem isn't the one that chooses which artifact to destroy. It is the Spuzzem, in fact, that makes the choice. All you have to do is read the card. Floral Spuzzem may choose to destroy a target artifact under that opponent's control and deal no damage. So it depends on how the Spuzzem is feeling that day. I also brought this up like in an earlier episode in the context of Mage MTG and a creature enchanted with a Fallen Empire's creature enchantment called Pharaoh's Mantle. I'm trying to figure out if this worked. A listener made a comment on the last episode, and the comment made sense to me, and I'm pretty sure this combo will not work the way that I wanted it to. A listener at Island Go said, "I'm pretty sure that the Floral Spuzzem does trigger even if it's Mage MTG. So that part is true. It'll trigger if it didn't block, even if it's Mage MTG. But I also think that since it's not removed from combat, the damage is just prevented, that your opponent could still block it after you maze it." And this gets into the Gatherer comments or the Gatherer rulings on Mage MTG. If you read the rulings on Mage MTG, it states that the creature is not removed from combat. It just has its damage prevented. It's still an attacking creature until the combat phase is complete. So you attack, you use Mage MTG to untap it. It neither deals nor receives damage as a result of combat, but it is still in combat. It's not removed from combat.
Yes, okay.
So there are 5 steps to the combat phase. There's the beginning of combat, declare attacker step, declare blocker step, combat damage step, and then the end of combat step. The way I'm reading this now is if I maze my Spuzzem after I declare it as an attacker, it's still an attacking creature until combat phase is complete. So the additional steps of combat still progress. I
I
declare
see.
attacker. My opponent still gets to declare blockers. There's still a combat damage step, but no damage is dealt. But that means that the Spuzzem is still technically blocked. Like there can be a blocker declared, even though I've
Yeah,
used a
that totally
maze.
makes sense. Yeah, because you'd be you know if it still counts as an attacker, then they get the opportunity to block
Yes.
it. Um,
And it's all about that ruling. The creature is not removed from combat. It just has its damage prevented. So I can't do my little Maze of Ith Floral Spasm trick, but I'm still happy to have a Floral Spasm. I'm still going to play my Maze of Ith because it's still great for many other reasons. So that's the only follow-up I had to last episode. I don't think you have any follow-ups to last episode. Do you,
I don't
Alex?
think so.
Maybe. Okay. So let's move on to segment one of episode 106. Segment one, I'm just calling Stupid Green Deck. Why? Because it's all about Stupid Green Deck. I have been building a lot of Stupid Green decks. So I've been exploring the green card pool in Premodern, and I learned that there was a, in my opinion, not so stupid green deck, historically known as Stupid Green Deck, and I want to talk about that today. There was a write-up about this deck in issue 30 of The Duelist, printed in 1998. That write-up was titled Green Sucks, but the Stupid Green Deck Rules Nationals. It's another article written by Beth Mo Morrison in her deck deconstruction uh, series. And the specific deck I want to talk about today was a deck that made two appearances in the top 8 of the U.S. Nationals in 1998. So this is the national she was talking about that Stupid Green Deck ruled. This name comes from insults that were hurled towards green players piloting this deck by all of the losers who were stomped by, quote, that stupid green deck. That's how it's got its name, I believe. U.S. Nationals 1998 was a tournament that we talked about before, Alex, several times now. It
Yeah, I remember
was,
some of these decks for sure.
yeah, it was a standard tournament in 1998. We talked about in previous episodes the White Weenie deck piloted by Matt Lindy. This is the Imperial Armor White Weenie Shadow deck and the inspiration for the current White Weenie Shadow deck I'm playing a lot in Premodern. We talked about Prosbloom piloted by two people that made the top 8 in this tournament, Peter Lear and also MTG supervillain Mike Long, who was known for having combo pieces in his lap, potentially. Could have been an accident, could have been cheating, nobody knows. And then also, we talked about Forbidian by John
Forbidian, yeah.
Finkel, the Forbid Ophidian
Mm.
blue control deck. Today, we're going to talk about Stupid Green Deck. Both Bryce Currents and Ryan Kelly made the top 8 with Stupid Green Deck, U.S. Nationals in 1998. They appear to have played the same damn list. Same list here, Ryan Kelly, Bryce Currents. We're just going to talk about this list. I believe the deck was first put together, I'll mention this too, from some of the readings I did. Some of this information I found in The Duelist. Some of this information I found on an MTG Goldfish post. It was made by @Jason Vorthos. He has a Twitter account. He has a Blue Sky account @Jason Vorthos. I think he usually goes by Initiate of the Ebon Hand. He has this deck posted on his MTG Goldfish, and then below it he has all sorts of links to old articles, old message boards posts written on the Stupid Green deck. So if you want to get more into the history of it, go look at Jason Vorthos's MTG Goldfish entry. But I believe it was first put together, or at a minimum inspired by somebody named Seth Byrne. He was the first one to put this deck together, and some other people in his play group kind of took it around to different tournaments, and is referred to by some at the time as California Green, but Stupid Green deck just sounds so much nicer. I'm going to pull this up on our Mox field. You can follow us on Moxfield at Old Men Magic on moxfield.com. This is where I post all of the decks that we talk about on the show. It was conceived of as a green control deck. So we're all used to just creature horde decks in green, big fatty decks in green. This one was meant to have a little bit more versatility, and there was a control element that was brought to the color green around this time. You have a 5 power trampler and some mana ramp, so these are all typical of green. But the card pool in Standard around 1998 also gave you a deck full of toolbox creatures, and they provided a bunch of different abilities. So some of them could pump other creatures, something we've seen before in green, but then others could provide life gain, which was kind of unusual for the color. We had some creatures at the time that were fogs on a stick. You had some that provided artifact destruction, and then you had a little bit of card draw too, which was kind of an unusual ability to have in green at the time. Still, actually, I say at the time, but there's very few opportunities for card draw in green. I think pretty much in any time period in Magic. There's very little. In addition, you have a lot of versatile removal spells and some direct damage that are available to you in this card pool. So let's go through the cards. I'm going to start with the creatures. There are 25 creatures. We have 4 Llanowar Elves, of course, because you got to have your mana ramp. You have 4 Stampeding Wildebeests. This is a card that you and I both like, Alex. We've both talked about it multiple times since we've come back to Premodern, thinking about what can we do with the Stampeding Wildebeest. It's 2 colorless, 2 green, 5/4 trample. So it's got great stats for its casting cost, but it does have a downside. During your upkeep, return a green creature you control to owner's hand. But in the right deck, you could turn that downside into an upside. This is a fantastic deck for this card because if you can keep it around, when combined with some of the other creatures in this deck, you get repetitive +1/+1 counters, you get repetitive life gain, you get repetitive fog, artifact destruction, card draw, and mana generation.
Yeah.
What more could you want?
Mm-hmm.
The only downside is you only have 4 of them in the deck, and there's nothing else you can add to this deck that has that same effect.
Yeah, okay.
So I was playing this deck against you the other day, and that's the biggest. That's where this deck was most lacking in my mind. Like I
Yeah,
almost
you
want.
didn't get the wildebeest out too much.
I got it out once, and you like took care of it after 2 or 3 turns. So I didn't really get to benefit from them. I almost want to kind of remake this deck, but maybe with some blue or something else that can bounce some of my creatures back
Yeah,
more
yeah.
consistently. You have 4 spike feeders. It's one of the summon spikes. It's 1 colorless, 2 green, 0/0, but it comes into play with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. You can pay 2 colorless to remove a +1/+1 counter from the feeder, and you put that counter on a target creature. Also, you can remove a +1/+1 counter from Spike Feeder and gain 2 life. I really like that second ability. It's come in handy for me. Definitely just the other day. And I like the fact that you don't have to funnel any mana into it in order to gain that life. So sometimes this deck was a little bit slow to get going for me, and that life gain ability kept me around in order for me to build up my board state. And then you have 4 Spike Weavers. This is a rare spike. It can make creatures even bigger because it comes into play with 3 +1/+1 counters that you can also move onto target creatures for 2 colorless mana. But in addition to that, it can fog. So you can pay 1 colorless, remove one of its 3 +1/+1 counters, and then creatures deal no combat damage this turn. Also, very much comes in handy. The deck runs 2 Uktabi orangutans, or orangutans. A killer common from Visions. Alex, we love the killer commons from Visions. When it comes into play, destroy target artifact. Wall of Blossoms. For just 1 colorless, 1 green, you get a 0/4, and when it comes into play, draw a card. I love both of those things. I love
Yeah.
a 0/4 for just 2. That blocks a lot of early game creatures that you have to deal with.
Yes.
And the draw card is amazing. And then you have 4 Wall of Roots. I don't know if I said 3 Wall of Blossoms. He has 3 Wall of Blossoms. I might have just said 4, but he has 3. And then 4 Wall of Roots. 1 colorless, 1 green, 0, 5. Put a -0, -1 counter on it to add a green to your mana pool. Use it only once each turn. So some more ramp, and again, a really nice early blocker. So you have the opportunity to put out, you know, 1 of 7 different 4 or 5 toughness blockers on just turn 2. And so many of these cards benefit from the Wildebeest. Wall of Blossoms is probably the best thing to have out with the Wildebeest because you give yourself repetitive card draw.
Hmm.
Stampede Wildebeest is in play, you bounce back the Wall of Blossoms, you replay the Wall of Blossoms, draw a card. Just keep doing that as many times as you can. I got to do that just the other day, just last night, in fact. Although you ruined it because I only got to do it once, I think, maybe twice max.
Sorry about that. I didn't see you get Wall of Roots at all, I don't think.
I didn't. I didn't draw. I didn't draw Wall Roots all night.
Hmm.
The Utami Orangutan, repetitive artifact destruction is great, but unless you're playing against somebody who's running like a mud deck or something, you're not usually going to have that many artifacts to destroy, so you're not really going to have to loop it that many times, which is also good because it's 3 mana to replay. Also, when you get slapped with a turn 1 Vice, it can seem like an eternity to play the Uktabi Orangutan, which is what happened to me the other day. I had no ramp, had to wait 3 turns, taking that Vice damage. It was very irritating. And then the spikes. I mean, they're also good with the Wildebeest, of course. You could just repetitively fog if you need to set up more of a control game. And
Yeah,
then the
pass
spike
their
feeders.
counters off to another creature, then bounce it back.
Yeah. And
I
the
like that
spike
a lot.
feeder's really nice too, because you could gain, life. You could gain life over and over again, just bounce right
Hmm.
back.
Hmm.
And the life gain ability doesn't require any mana. So yes, you have to pay the mana to replay it, the 3 mana to replay it, but you don't have to pay the mana to remove that 1/1 counter to get 2 life. Sorceries. Sorcery slots in this deck are full of mana disruption, really. Not just mana disruption, versatile removal, but a lot of mana disruption opportunities. You have 4 creeping molds, 2 colorless, 2 green, sorcery, destroy target artifact, land, or enchantment. I remember when this card was printed in Visions. It was pretty exciting because
It had yeah,
this was pre-naturalized.
it had a lot of tool like removal to the green toolbox.
This was pre-naturalized. It was also it was pre-Winter's Grasp. It wasn't pre-Thermokarst. And it wasn't pre-Ice Storm, but we couldn't get our hands on ice storms as easily. So you still had the land destruction ability available to you in the form of Thermokarst from Ice Age as a 12-year-old who didn't have a lot of money to find unlimited cards. But you didn't have the enchantment removal, or at least the targeted enchantment removal. You
Yeah.
didn't always want to play a Tranquility and wipe your own enchantments off the board.
Hmm. There are
But
so many more green enchantment removal cards now than there used to be. Yeah.
when I saw Naturalized, I was like, what the fuck, man? I don't need to put white in every deck just to deal with enchantments any longer. But it was 4 mana, 2 colors, 2 green. Not always the easiest to play. And then you had Desert Twister. Originally came out in Arabian Nights. It's been reprinted in some other sets. Can't remember if it was reprinted in like 4th edition or 5th edition or whatever. I don't remember. It destroyed any card in play, but it was hard to cast. Even in green where you had ramp. It was 4 colorless, 2 green. And then he ran 4 Winter's Grasps. 1 colorless, 2 green, destroy target land. So you have 11 potential land destruction spells in this deck. So you're really well suited to deal with multicolored decks with greedy mana bases. Use these just to target 1 blue or 1 red. Keep them off of one particular color of mana. That can be enough to make a lot of multicolored decks really stumble, especially if you're not running any fancy mana rocks or anything.
Yeah, yeah. Desert Twister, by the way, after Arabian Nights, it was reprinted in revised fourth and fifth,
Oh
and then
shit.
later in Mercadian Masks.
I totally forgot about Revised.
Yeah, I didn't remember that it was in there.
And then you have 5 enchantments. And this is where the deck gets really interesting. This is where I started to see a card that I never really see anybody play any longer. It ran 4 copies of Eladomri's Vineyard, which is an enchantment that you can cast for 1 green. It's from Tempest. And at the beginning of each player's main phase, you add 2 green to that player's mana pool. It has a high rating on Gather, 4.531. Current market price of $5.86. It's not a reserve list card, but it's very rarely reprinted. Trying to see how many times. How many times was this reprinted? It might have just been in like one secret layer or two. I'm typing Maze of Ith again. Eladamri's. I make lots of typos, Alex. I was typing on a shared screen. They was up on a big projector at work one day, and everybody started laughing at me. These kids were laughing at me because I kept making typos and I had backspace, and I was like, "Shut up! I'm the one in charge here. I'm leading this meeting." Okay, Tempest. That's when it was originally printed, and then yeah, just 2 secret layers.
Oh, okay.
It's not a card that's reprinted very often, even though it's not on the reserve list. It's kind of strange that it's not on the reserve list because when you think about the cards that they like to put on the reserve list around this time, of course they would they would target the stuff that was broken, the stuff that they were like, man, we shouldn't have printed this in the first place. Let's put it on the reserve list, not reprint it. But they also like to target the cards that are kind of unique and feature uh, characters
Yeah.
that were the main focus of the storyline for like a particular set, like Eladamri, for instance,
Hmm.
you know? So, because he's associated with Tempest, he's associated with the world around this time. I'm just surprised that it's not on the reserve list. But it's not, although they don't like to reprint it. At the time it was printed, also, this is key, mana burn existed. So this card could actually provide some form of direct damage in green, although giving your opponent mana could always be a double-edged sword, of course, especially if they want to ramp out big threats, and especially because you cast this and then your opponent benefits from it first
Before you do, yeah. It'd be
before
really
you do.
nice if the card said, like, you may cast this as if it were an instant on it. That would be really cool.
Hmm.
But no.
But no. I found this comment from the Annals of Gatherer. It was posted by Kitsune Warlock on the 2nd of June in the year 2009 at 1 hour and 11 minutes and 00 seconds in the PM. He gave it a 4.5 out of 5, and he said, although there's rumors that mana burn will go away in M10, it did. It did, spoiler alert. This card has other uses, particularly getting 2 green a turn. Sure, it gives it to your opponent, and it gives it to them first, but that's only useful if they can actually use that colorless mana or green. There are many good legacy decks out there that just can't use both green in a single turn, meaning this card offers the green player significant advantage. Also, back in the day, this card would often find itself played just for the 2 points of damage via mana burn.
Mm.
So again,
Yeah,
that was a
it
bit,
definitely makes me miss Mana Burn. A few other cards do as well.
yeah, a few cards do. So I thought this was a great example of a card with a symmetrical effect that becomes asymmetrical in many matchups if you build around it properly. So
I wonder if this person, sideboarded it out against green heavy decks.
it wouldn't be a bad option. I'll say it wouldn't be a bad option, but it also depends on what those green decks run. Like if I guess I'll get into this. So how do you make this asymmetrical for you? One, you're mono green, so you're always going to be able to consistently use those 2 green mana. Not always, but a lot of the times.
Yeah.
More consistently than your opponent. But what if your opponent is playing mono green? Well, what kind of mono green are they playing? Are they playing decks uh with as many high casting cost cards as you have in here? Like you're running 3 Desert Twisters, 4 Creeping Molds, 4 Spike Weavers. You got a pretty high mana curve for a green deck here.
I see what you're
So
saying.
maybe they're running more low casting cost cards and they don't really need the Eladamri's Vineyard mana anyways.
Uh-huh.
Are they running as many cards as you that you utilize colorless mana to have their effects? Do they have as
Yeah.
many things to feed it into after they've cast the spell, after the
Right.
spell's on the battlefield? I don't know. So like, I guess it still depends
Yeah, as long as it's helping you more,
what
you
kind of
can
green
still
deck
just
is your
keep them in.
opponent running. If your opponent's playing a multicolored deck and wants to use the 2 green, this is another thing too, to pay the colorless portion of a spell's mana cost, because many spells have colorless mana cost. You have plenty of land destruction to cut them off from one or more color sources. So I like all the land destruction combined with Eladamri's Vineyard. And two, let's say your opponent's playing a green deck. Do they have Stampeding Wildebeest? The Eladamri's Vineyard, when you have Stampeding Wildebeest out, it really does a lot to neuter the downside of the Wildebeest. Because the
Hmm.
Stampeding Wildebeest is bouncing back your orangutans, your walls, back to your hand every turn, your
True,
spike
true.
feeders. The Vineyard, you can use them to essentially replay those walls for free, or to replay the spike feeders just for 1 or 2 mana instead of 3 or 4. So it helps a lot to neuter the downside of your big beater creature. Just a thought. And then he also runs one Survival of the Fittest. This, of course, is a superstar of any toolbox creature decks, and you have a lot of toolbox creatures here. So you got a card in your hand that you don't need anymore, like a Llanowar Elves, turn 5. Why not get your orangutan to destroy an artifact they have on the other side? I don't got to tell you why Survival of the Fittest is great. Everybody knows that. The only surprise here is that they're only running one. It's more typical to see a play set of these nowadays. Maybe this is before people realize the full power of Survival of the Fittest. And then you have 19 lands, 15 forests, 4 wastelands, so leaning more into the land destruction.
Yeah, it ends up
I
being a lot of land destruction once you count those wastelands too.
A lot. And the first time I sat down to play this deck, what was my opponent playing for? Of Teferi's Response. What kind of bullshit is that? What are the odds,
Yeah,
Alex?
that was a bad matchup.
It was irritating. I love destroying lanes. You very rarely ever get Teferi's Response.
Yeah, yeah.
Very rarely.
I have them in that deck because I have so many lands and a bunch of man lands, and I turn my lands into creatures. So I want to be able to counter anything that's hitting my creatures that are also lands.
And then I think you cast 3 on me in one game. I was like,
I
the
might
last
have.
one, I was
I
like,
was
he's
drawing
not going
it.
to have another one. I
I was
figured maybe
drawing it.
you had 4 in your deck, but I was like, he doesn't have another one in his hand. He had another one in his hand.
Well,
Okay,
what's in the sideboard?
that's what I'm going to now. Sideboard. Sideboard. The info on MTG top 8 is incorrect because it says there's also 4 Winter's Grasps in the sideboard, and there's 4 in the main deck, and we know that can't happen.
I see.
So we won't worry about that for now. There's also 4 Emerald Charms, which is a charm from Visions. Instant, 1 green. You can do several different things with this. It's your choice, not the Floral Spuzzem's choice. It's all about what you want to do when you cast Emerald Charm. You can untap target permanent, or you can destroy target global enchantment, or target creature loses flying until end of turn. Emerald Charm was often run in green decks around this time, in particular for its ability to destroy a target global enchantment. That was the big
So
draw.
one thing I want to mention because I've been putting this into a few decks recently. I think I'm really liking it these days. Uh, the new text on it says destroy target non-aura enchantment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to point that out in case anyone's thinking like maybe because it says global enchantment, it's only hitting certain types of enchantments or whatever. But anything that's not an aura, you can destroy with this for 1 green. So that's great enchantment
Mhm.
removal just for that, effect,
It's
1 mana.
quite good.
And then you have the 2 other effects too. Nice to untap a creature that they don't expect to be available as a blocker, and then you
Mm-hmm.
kill one of their creatures. Good combat trick.
Mm-hmm. There's one Survival of the Fittest in the sideboard, so sometimes he
Okay.
brings in 2 survivals. One more Uktabi Orangutan, playing an artifact heavy opponent, bring in another Tang. Null Brooch, a rare we don't see very often. A rare from Exodus, 4 colorless artifact. Card that I have a play set of, and I'm always like, I should play the Null Brooch in something. I haven't given it a spin yet. You can pay 2 colorless, which your Eladamri's Vineyard will pay for that. No, it won't. I mean, it will, but you won't want to you won't be activating the Null Breach when you have the Eladamri's Vineyard mana available to you. So I'll just say that right now.
Oh, okay. The beginning of your main phase.
Yeah. Back to Null Breach. 2 colorless, tap, discard your hand. Counter target non-creature spell. Play this ability as an interrupt. So it's, a potentially high cost losing your whole hand. Most people don't want to do that. But, there are some decks where you do want to lose your whole hand. We've seen that with Bazaar of Baghdad. It was a a land that nobody played really very often back in the day. And over the years, it's become more and more expensive as your options for like Reanimator decks have become better and better. And now you want to dump your hand. This isn't a fucking reanimation deck, though, so it's irrelevant here. Why am I talking about that? I will say in this deck in particular, if you have your Wall of Blossoms, Wildebeest combo going, you can build your hand back up. You have some card draw ability in this green deck. You pitch your hand. Maybe you can draw something back. Maybe you can rebuild your hand. This is the most important thing I want to point out, a hand of 0 is still a hand.
Yeah.
That's
If
key.
you spent down your hand, the downside to this is, not anywhere near as bad.
And green decks are good at emptying your hand. So a hand of 0 is still a hand. One thing I was thinking about though is like when does he want to mainboard this? I don't
I
know.
don't know, maybe decks that have like creature board wipes, like Wrath of God or something going on.
That's exactly what I put in my note. Wrath of God will be one good target. So that was my thought too.
Okay.
Something that has a board wipe that can clear out all of your creatures or clear out multiple creatures. Maybe you bring in the Null Brooch to combat the wrath effects. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Maybe even against counter decks too, if you want to be able to counter their counter.
That is true. Yeah. Yeah. And then you have Scragnoth. Maybe you bring it in against the same decks that you bring the Scragnoth in against.
Uh-huh.
Counter heavy deck. Scragnoth is 4 colorless, 1 green. It's a summon beast from Tempest. It's 3/4. It has protection from blue, and while it's being cast, it cannot be countered. So it's a nice little threat that can't be countered. I think it's a nice option to swap with the Vineyard, especially against control decks, because control decks typically need lots of mana to operate at their best. So maybe you don't want to give the control deck, loads of mana from the Vineyard. Not that they can use it to cast counter spells or anything during your turn, but yeah, most control decks operate on a higher mana curve. So
yeah, it just loosens up loosens everything up for them.
So a summary of the deck, it's a green control based deck full of toolbox creatures. The Stampeding Wildebeests are an engine. They operate as an engine in this deck, an engine for card draw, for life gain, for fog effects, for pumping your creatures with +1/+1 counters. It's a creature-based strategy that's backed up by a diverse removal package. And with the Eladamri's Vineyard, at least at the time, it was a rare opportunity for repeated direct damage in green. I like it. I like it very much, Alex. What else do I want to say about it? I found another deck list. This one was pulled directly from The Duelist, from this article that I showed, written by Bethmo. Green sucks. On the side, page 2, she listed Bryce Currance's version. And then she listed this version from Seth Byrne. She called it Seth's original deck that evolved into the stupid green deck. And his sideboard was a little bit different. City of Solitude and Erratic Portal.
That.
Erratic Portal is a rare from Exodus, 4 colorless. Pay 1 colorless, tap, return target creature to owner's hand unless its controller plays 1 colorless. So
I like that.
I was talking before about, you only have 4 wildebeests in your deck. He actually only ran 2. Okay, so he only ran 2. I kind of want to go 4 wildebeest and then maybe like 2 erratic portals or something, because 4 wildebeest wasn't even enough wildebeest for my liking. I wanted more ways to bounce my creatures back to me to really take advantage of the card draw engine, to take advantage of the spike engine.
I
The
see.
4
Yeah.
wildebeest didn't seem like enough.
In the erratic portal, I mean, you can use it on your opponent's creatures too. So like, there's a lot of versatility there. It kind of sucks that it's 4 mana, but I mean, it's a strong card, so I
Yeah,
understand it. Um, I do recognize the art on this now that I see it again.
the portal.
Yeah, erratic portal.
Yeah,
A
we talked about it before on an episode.
4.212 on Gatherer.
When we were talking about enter the battlefield creatures in one episode, we stumbled upon erratic portal.
Oh, okay.
But I picked some up. I haven't played them yet though.
I'm looking at comments on it now. People are mentioning, yeah, some enter the battlefield stuff like Avalanche Riders to go with it.
There's so many options. I mean, it's an artifact too, so you can run it in any deck. Pick a color with your favorite enter the battlefield creatures, something you want to build around.
Yeah, yeah.
Erratic portal can
I'm gonna
be
have to think about putting this into a few things.
and then he ran 4 guys blessing, 2 gestures cap, so this would be great against combo decks, and Prosbloom was running around at this time. It's a perfect way to neuter combo decks. And then 1 Sylvan Library. I also wanted to pull this up because I found his list. I don't know if this is in the Duelist version. I don't see it in the Duelist version. So in this Seth's original deck list here in the Duelist issue, I don't see any Cursed Scrolls, but other versions of the deck that I found in different places online, they ran Cursed Scroll.
Okay.
And I like having Cursed Scroll in this deck very much, actually.
Because you have the mana, the extra
because I
mana.
have the mana. I have the mana and you're emptying your hand, often and easily. So there were times when I was playing the Bryce Currents list, and I was wishing that I had some Cursed Scroll in my deck to do some direct damage. So it's another opportunity to do direct damage. In addition to Eladamri's Vineyard, and actually nowadays in Premodern, if you want to run this deck, it's the only option for direct damage in this deck because Eladamri's Vineyard, there's no mana burn any longer.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about Cursed Scroll when I was playing against this last night. With all that extra mana being thrown around.
I mean, that's a perfect mana sink
Yeah.
in a deck where you're playing out most of your hand anyways. It's the perfect mana
It's
sink.
like the old famous mana sink.
It's direct damage, it's targeted creature removal. Comes in handy all the
Yeah,
time.
like so my takeaway from it, I guess, was just that, and I think this, is now like, uh, made more significant by the fact that mana burn's gone. But I'm just wondering about the Eladamri's Vineyard still, because like it helped me a lot, and I was playing green and blue. So I understand maybe you could sideboard it out or whatever,
Hmm.
and maybe it's still helping you more. But like, I don't know.
It's scary to play. It's
I
scary to
could
play, and
see
this
just
is
putting in more mana elves instead of it or something, or maybe
and
just
th
even trimming the number down.
and this is why you don't see it very often. I never see anybody play it.
Hmm.
And I don't like the fact that you're giving your opponent mana first. I don't like the fact that you're running a relatively low mana curve deck, and you're giving this mana to your opponent that might be running a higher mana curve deck and using this mana to play out more powerful spells faster than they would be able to otherwise.
Yeah.
I say these things out, but knowing that it also won me a game the other day. Like you were playing, you had three propagandas on the battlefield.
Yeah.
So every time I wanted to attack with one creature, I had to pay 6 colorless mana. Lucky for me, I had three Eladamri's Vineyards
hmm
on the battlefield. So I was using this to attack you. Otherwise, I would have been totally locked down with nothing to do. So it won me a game, but it is scary to play, and you really have to be considerate of whether or not it's going to help your opponent more than it's going to help you in a lot of cases. And you don't always know that, especially. I mean, you don't know that game one, especially. So it's almost a risk. Maybe it starts in the sideboard nowadays if you want to run it. Maybe I start with it in the sideboard. And then I'd have to think long and hard about when I would even sideboard it in.
Yeah.
But I like it. My favorite thing about this deck, when I say it, I mean I like the stupid green deck. My favorite thing about this deck is really the Stampeding Wildebeests.
Yeah, I
And
like all the creatures that you benefit from being able to bounce. That's cool.
I like it very much. And I'm trying to think of some ways. If you know some creatures, if you're listening, you know some creatures in the pre-modern card pool that you want to run with Stampeding Wildebeest even more than Wall of Blossoms. Let us know in the comments. I want to hear it. I want to put it in a stupid green deck in Premodern. Is there anything else you want to say about the stupid green deck, Alex?
I don't think so.
It's also a good opportunity to play the spikes. And this is another reason maybe to play Eladamri's Vineyard, because I don't know that I like the spikes nearly as much when I don't have an Eladamri's Vineyard in play, because they do get costly. They get costly. They're 3 and 4 mana to play. And
Yeah.
then you
Well,
got
I
to
mean, I'm assuming if you take the vineyards out, you're going to put in something else that is also still producing mana for you. You
yeah,
know, um, more mana moles or mana rocks or something like that.
more animals. Finchhorn elves, maybe.
Yeah.
Do I want a deck with that many mana elves? I don't know. I don't know.
I
I have
mean,
to
you could
think
have
about it.
birds in there, and then you could be using the spikes to pump your birds so that they're an offensive threat eventually.
That's true. That's true. Bethmo talked about the spikes in this Duelist article. The thought of removing counters should immediately bring another set of cards to mind, the spikes. If you have enough mana, you can play a spike. If you have enough mana, that's key. Use its ability to move all but one of its counters to other creatures, then bounce it next turn with the Wildebeest. I mean, that would be the ideal situation, right? You have like two Eldamar
Yeah.
Vineyards on the board. You have some mana. You use some lands, maybe a mana mole or two. You pay the spike immediately. Use some of its counters up to do the thing, whatever the thing it is that particular spike does, and the next turn you bounce it with the Wildebeest, and you use the mana to replay it. But that takes a lot, and it requires multiple cards on the board: a Vineyard, a Wildebeest, a Spike, and it requires your opponent not to destroy any of those. That's kind of a big ask.
There's a interesting little line in there. Against Tradewind Rider decks, that's to the right. You zoomed in too much. Against Tradewind Rider decks or heavy blue decks using buyback spells, casting Eladamri's Vineyard can be
Yes.
suicidal, so
Yeah.
don't.
Yes. Yeah.
Instead, play your other mana sources, etc., etc.
Trade and Water was first printed in Tempest, and that was a big card around this time.
Okay.
And that had a high activation cost. If I remember correctly, it cost as much to activate it as it cost to cast it. 3 colors, 1 blue. Let me look that up again.
Might. I know that's how much it costs to cast.
Because it was a card that I really liked, but I'd never really
But yeah, I think it's 3 or 4
performed
mana to activate.
performed well with. Let me pull this up. MTG stock's going a little bit slow. Oh my God, am I wrong? I
Oh,
couldn't be
yep.
more wrong. It's 3 colorless, 1 blue to cast, and then you just tap it. Doesn't require any mana to activate. You tap it, tap 2 creatures you control, return target permanent to owner's hand.
Yeah, okay, I forgot about that.
So it's 4 to cast. But this is big. Buyback spells. What else was running around in Tempest at this time in blue that you didn't want
Capsize.
to exactly capsize? So I mean, imagine this, and you would also this would also always be, often be run with Tradewind Rider. Imagine having some Eladamri's Vineyards on the board, and you're giving them like 4 mana to pay for their capsize buyback over and over and over again. Good luck
Yeah.
doing anything.
Uh-huh.
That sucks. So
That sucks.
yeah, take the Eladamri's Vineyard out against control decks. Against decks, like I mentioned already, usually operate in a higher mana curve, usually have something to sink colorless into. So you don't want to give them 2 mana, 4 mana to work with
Yeah.
every main phase. Instead, play your other mana sources, get a lot of other creatures out as quickly as possible, try to beat down your opponent. So the control elements of the stupid green deck are nice when you're not playing a deck that's heavier on the control than you. If you're playing a heavier blue control deck, you just abandon that strategy and try to go full beatdown.
Okay.
Forget trying to control the game. Those decks do that better if you give them time. I agree with that. Go all out aggressive. Your land destruction can be very strong because your opponent's deck needs a lot of mana to get rolling. After you sideboard out the vineyards and bring in Skragnos and more land destruction. So Skragnos are the perfect thing to bring in. Do you bring in we were talking about this just a moment ago though. The Null Brooch. Use it to counter the counters. Maybe not. Because again, they could do it better than you.
Yeah. Might just be a losing battle.
I think you play it against board wipes. That's what you use it. That's what you
Yeah,
use
I
it
feel
for,
like
to
it's
combat
it's
board
yeah, for
wipes.
cards that have like a very lopsided effect, like one card that has a very large effect, you know.
Mm-hmm. She also mentioned something that happened in one of the U.S. national playoff matches. Two stupid green decks faced off against each other. Before I managed to break the standoff, Bryce Kearns had a 10-10 spike feeder on the board at one point and a 13-12 stampeding wildebeest later in the game.
Ooh.
I just have not been able to benefit from the spikes to that degree. But, it depends what your opponent's running. If they don't have a lot of targeted creature removal, I can see that really getting rolling. And then this is a question I have too. What spikes to use? I would have to go back through the card pool and see if there are spikes that have been printed since that I would want to run other than Spike Feeder or Spike Weaver. Any spike except Spike Drone can use the Wildebeest trick to make other creatures bigger, so abilities and casting costs are the deciding factor. Seth played 4 Spike Feeder and Spike Weaver. The feeder can provide 2 life per turn at the cost of 3 mana and can destroy itself, giving you up to 4 life in response to an opponent's attempt to destroy, control, or capsize it. I really enjoyed the feeder when I played it. And this is something that didn't come into play, but I can see it being very handy in this particular meta. In response to an opponent's attempt to destroy, control, or capsize it, great for making that buyback spell fizzle. Because the life gain ability doesn't require any mana, you can just, in response, remove the 2 counters from it, gain 4 life, kill the creature, then the capsize no longer has a target. And then the spell fizzles, so you can't buy it back.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
good way to get rid of their capsize or get rid of anything that
Yeah,
targets the
yeah.
feeder that has a buyback cost, which doesn't come in to play very often. That's not something that's usually going to happen, but in this particular time, in this place, in this standard environment. This makes Feeder a top pick. Recycling a Weaver can fog your opponent's attacks forever, making you effectively immune to combat damage. And then another one that's apparently, or was apparently available at this time, Spike Breeder. Another possibility to produce hordes of 1/1 token creatures. Never played that one. Okie dokie. That stupid green deck. I'm going to put together stupid
This
green
said
decks
down
for you
there
and see
that
what I can do. I'm sure lots of
having
people have
more
done
than
it
one
already.
survival of the fittest in the hand could be dead weight, and there's some, I think it said some decks where you might not need to use it against. Uh,
What'd you say? I missed that.
Here, in some duels, you may not need survival, and more than one in a hand is dead weight. Putting one or two in the deck seems to work well.
I know she wrote that in here. I think this was a time before people really realized how powerful that is.
Oh,
Yes, I
you're sticking with
understand.
that? Okay.
Yeah, that's true for a lot of cards that people still run four ofs because it's so good. Yes, it's dead weight if you draw a second. It's true for a lot of really great
But you
cards,
really want to draw it.
but you
Yeah.
really want to draw it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was very soon after this, I think, that you rarely saw one survival. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a survival expert, but it's atypical to see people just running one survival unless they have another way in their deck to go get that survival and get, to draw it more consistently, something to tutor it up. I don't know. But that's stupid green deck. That's segment one for today. Alex, if you're ready, I'm going to move on to segment two of episode 106. Segment two, this is going to be pretty brief. I just want to talk about pre-modern reprints in Innistrad Remastered. Innistrad, Alex, is a set that we know not a damn thing about. We haven't made it that far yet. Innistrad was printed after we had stopped playing for the first time and well before we had started playing it again later on. I just think it has something to do with vampires. That's my very ignorant take on Innistrad. Vampires? I don't know if you know anything more,
No,
Alex.
I think you're right. Yeah. I think it's like a gothic vampire-y type deal.
Innistrad Remastered is a part of the Master Series, the fourth remastered Magic the Gathering set to appear in paper. It was released just recently, January 24th, 2025. It features 297 regular cards, 10 basic lands, and includes randomly inserted premium versions of all the cards. I am seeing people post like fancy pools that they're getting excited about of like Markov or some other shit. Some vampire dude, it looks like. Some of them are numbered. I don't know. I'm assuming they're pulling them from these Innistrad remastered packs. But I don't give a shit about any of that stuff. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the pre-modern legal cards that were reprinted in Innistrad Remastered. And it's a small number, but there's some interesting ones.
Yeah, there's not many.
You got forest, you got island, you got mountain, you got plains, you got swamp. That's the end of
So
segment two.
far, so good.
We have four non-land spells that were reprinted in Innistrad Remastered. The first being Fiery Temper.
Okay.
Fiery Temper, if we go back through all the reprints, it's been reprinted many times.
Wow.
First printed in this one.
Hmm.
I'm blanking. Torment.
Torment.
Got it. There we go. Torment. It is one colorless, two red. Instant. Fiery Temper deals 3 damage to target creature or player. So you got a 3 mana lightning bolt. What is this bullshit? Well, it also has Madness for 1 red. Still not that great.
No.
It's
I
a very
played.
limited lightning bolt.
I was playing that black-red deck against you. That's like a haste deck, but it has
Mhm.
madness cards in it because I have some like discard effects. So I looked at this for that because there's not too many madness cards, but I went with violent eruption, and yeah, I didn't see much of a reason to put this in my deck.
I screwed up, Alex. When you cast that against me, I said, "Oh, I think that was reprinted in Innistrad Remastered." I was
Oh, you were
confusing it with
thinking of
Fiery
fiery
Temper.
temper.
And I had that in my head because just like a week before, I was looking through all of the pre-modern legal cards with Madness in red. I'm spelling Eruption wrong.
Violent
I'm not
eruption.
spelling it wrong. I'm making a typo. Er, Eruption. That wasn't a misspelling. That was a typo. I also saw Violent Eruption and Fiery Temper, and I said Fiery Temper blows, but maybe Violent Eruption would be an option for the deck that I'm playing, where I'm looking for Madness and or flashback cards in red or green. Unfortunately, it's Fiery Temper and not Violent Eruption that's being reprinted in Innistrad Remastered. Violent Eruption is a better card. One colorless, 3 red, instant. Deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or players. Madness cost of just one colorless and 2 red. So it is better. if you're able to play it for its madness cost. This card did work really well against me the other day. My
Yeah,
white
I
weenie
was
deck,
happy that it worked. Yeah.
I thought I had a nice little wall of Mother's Runes set up, but you used Violent Eruption to clear out two of them after I had blocked and then tapped them. Then you killed something else. I think you killed a shadow creature, and then you directed one to my face. And I was like, that really screws up my plan. You just killed three of my creatures. They were about to do a lot of work for me, and now I lost. Then I lost the game after that. So
Mhm.
I might have lost anyways if you hadn't cast the Violent Eruption, but it definitely helped.
Yeah, and
Definitely.
if you for some reason can't get the madness cost to work, you're only paying one, you're only paying four for it to divide four damage however you want. It's not bad anyways. So
It's still not a terrible card. Yeah, that's the
it's
key
just you have to
for
be red heavy because it's a couple red
three
in
red.
the casting cost.
It was three red, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, for the full
Yeah,
casting cost, it's three red.
yeah. So in Innistrad Remastered, we also have a reprint of Groundskeeper,
Oh
which
yeah,
is a
okay.
card that I like very much. Although I haven't really put it in. I haven't put it in a deck yet. Originally printed in Mercadian Masks, it's 1 green, 1/1 Druid. Pay one colorless, 1 green. Return target basic land card from your graveyard to your hand. That's it. Also reprinted in Innistrad Remastered. Not an expensive card. And then I think this is the reprint that most people were most excited about. You have Hermit Druid. I'm typing Hermit Druid into MTG stocks because I'm wondering if this one got up there in price. It did. So Fiery Temper is cheap. Groundskeeper is not expensive. Hermit Druid got up to over 20 bucks.
Uh-huh.
So this is an opportunity for people who want to play Hermit Druid to probably get a much cheaper reprint copy. I don't know how many times the Druid has been reprinted. Nothing. No reprints other than the list, which I don't know how frequently. Those say they stay. This says MTG stock says those sell for 20 bucks too.
Oh wow, okay.
So I don't know if that's correct or not, but that's what MTG stocks is telling me. So there's not a lot of copies of Hermit Druid floating around. Other than the list, you had the DCI Judge promo, which is expensive, over 100 bucks. Now Innistrad Remastered, you have a couple different treatments, and it gives you opportunity to pick one up for less than 10 bucks. Probably even less than that as more packs get opened. This is a crazy like horror poster treatment.
Yeah, it's weird.
Tap 1 green, tap, reveal cards from the top of your library, dot dot dot. Until you reveal a basic land card. And then if you move down to another, so on the top left of the
So
card, it says,
disjointed and confusing.
yes, I hate this. Uh, top left of the card, pay 1 green, tap, reveal cards from the top of your library, dot dot dot. And then move your eyes to the right of the card, dot dot dot, until you reveal a basic land card, and then move down to the bottom right of the card, put that card into your hand, dot dot dot, and then the bottom middle of the card, all other fuck. All other cards revealed this way into your graveyard. If you just want if you want a piece of cardboard that looks cool, this is a good option for you. If you
Yeah.
want to be able to read the card, it's a terrible option. I mean, you can still read it, but it just makes it more difficult. It's unnecessarily difficult. It's
And the
disjointed. This
power
is
and toughness are in a rectangle and a
and a
triangle on
triangle
top of each other.
for unknown reasons. So that's what they're doing these days. If you play Premodern, you can just buy this copy. It's 20 bucks. You don't need to buy the $20 copy also. You could just buy the base. You could buy the base Innistrad Remastered copy.
Yeah.
This is a better game piece. See, I can read it. It's 1/1 on the bottom right. One power, one toughness. You look at the top left, it says Hermit Druid. You look at the top right, it says 1 colorless, 1 green. And then here in the text box, it tells you everything that it does. It's real
And it
easy
has flavor
peasy.
text on it.
And it has flavor text.
It has a
The
quote.
woods are not unknowable. certainty and order are woven with the roots.
I like it.
Who said it? The Hermit Druid, I'm assuming. It's not attributed to him. Let's look at the original Stronghold printing. Different flavor text. Seeking the company of plants ensures that your wits will go to seed.
Okay.
Now reprinted in Innistrad Remastered. And then we have one additional spell that was printed in Innistrad Remastered that is pre-modern legal. It is Syncopate. It's a blue spell. It was originally printed in Odyssey. It's an interesting little counter. One blue X instant. Counter target spell unless its controller pays X. If that spell is countered this way, remove it from the game instead of putting it into owner's graveyard.
Okay.
So, it's conditionally more useful.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what your opponent's playing. Sometimes you really don't want the stuff in their graveyard. You got to get it out of there. So you got to get it out of there. And in those cases, something like Syncopate is good to run. Also got a comment in one of our videos the other day. I didn't even see what video it was. The comment was in reference to. Well, we must have been having some conversation about why they used a particular mix of counterspells that they used in their deck. I believe the comment said something about meddling mage. Oh, you want to use a mix so they can't meddling mage.
Oh, yeah.
So that's always a good reason too.
Yeah.
Well, you might want to go with different kind of counterspells. Syncopate. Common from Odyssey. Now also printed in Innistrad Remastered. Unusual reprint for Innistrad Remastered. I don't know what it has to do with vampires or Innistrad or why they chose this to reprint, but
Probably just more for, yeah, gameplay purposes than flavor, I would guess. They just
sounds
like it
like
in the set for the limited environment. I don't know.
sounds like a good guess. Oh, and I wonder if maybe in, this Gothic set, there's probably a lot of things that interact with the graveyard.
Oh,
So maybe
yes.
that's a good
Yeah.
reason
Yeah.
to have Syncopate.
Good call.
That would make sense, actually. Nailed it. Madness card goes to the graveyard.
Episode over.
Well, Madness card, you can cast it when it's discarded.
Mm-hmm.
Graveyard related.
Yeah. Also, yeah.
Groundskeeper brings basic land card back from your
Groundskeeper brings
graveyard.
back from the graveyard. Yeah.
Hermit Druid puts things into your graveyard. Syncopate.
What a
Exile it instead
pattern.
of putting it in a graveyard. So graveyard. There we go. We figured it out. We had to work through it. I had to talk through it a little bit,
Yeah, that's okay.
but we figured it out. And that brings us to the end of episode 106 of the Old Mage MTG podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for listening all the way through. Alex, you gonna watch the big game today?
I suppose.
Who's gonna win the foosball game?
No. Uh, uh,
I watched zero
Hi.
NFL games today. Who?
Some
Who's
sort
gonna
of
win?
event will make the game unfinishable.
Is it
All the
gonna be
power will
Taylor?
go out.
Is Taylor all I care about is whether or not Taylor Swift is gonna be happy or sad later tonight. Because I want her to live her best life. I hate seeing Tay Tay cry. I want her mans to raise that trophy up high and say some dumb shit like he did last year when he won. I can't remember what he said, but it was
They
dumb.
like sing Viva Las Vegas or something.
Oh yes, it was embarrassing.
Yeah.
And then people were like, Taylor needs to break up with him. Okay, that's enough. I don't even get excited about the commercials anymore.
They all
That's
suck.
probably a good thing though. I
They
remember
all
back
suck.
in the day when I was a kid, that was a major draw for the Super Bowl. How about them commercials?
They've somehow managed with PR to create like a system where everyone expects the Super Bowl commercials to be good and like looks forward to them. What a ruse.
I know. Is Prince playing the Super Bowl halftime show? If not, I don't give a fuck. And he's dead now.
Zombie
So that
Prince?
means that would be sick, actually. Very on. It would fit the theme of Innistrad Remastered, coming back from the graveyard, Prince doing the halftime show again, back from the dead. I was watching Prince today, I was just today, every once in a while, probably like several times in a year, I find myself watching two Prince performances. One is Purple Rain at the Super Bowl halftime show in the rain. It was beautiful, Alex. It was raindrops from heaven.
A guy with a hose.
No, it were raindrops from heaven. And I find myself watching, and this is the one I watched today, him rocking out one of the greatest guitar solos of all time at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony, playing While My Guitar Gently Weeps with Tom Petty, some other people, George Harrison's son, and then other people I don't know the name of. But it was one of the sickest performances of all time. Was it the best Prince performance of all time? Too hard to say. There's too many good ones. But it's amazing, and you should watch it if you haven't. Prince, While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Prince Super Bowl halftime show, best Super Bowl halftime show of all time. What's the second best one, Alex?
You got me.
I have no idea actually.
I
What do
thought I
you
was supposed to
mean?
know.
Creed.
It was,
No,
huh?
wait, that wasn't
Who?
that wasn't the halftime show, was it? That was like a pre-show. That
Who?
one goes viral all the time too. Creed singing
Oh,
something. Maybe it wasn't even the Super Bowl, but Scott Stapp was wearing like a Cowboys jersey. I believe it was at Cowboy Stadium, and they had some bald guy that was like shredded, like flying around the field, like wrapped in some sort of
really?
cloth. Yeah, they were like big strips of cloth that were like hanging down from the rafters, and he was flying back and forth.
Okay. Did anything
Anyways,
happen?
that was it. Well, I mean,
Oh,
Creed sang, the guy floated around. That was it.
I was gonna say the Janet Jackson uh wardrobe malfunction.
I missed it. I was in the kitchen.
The kitchen. Oh
I was
man.
in the kitchen. And then I heard gas from the other room, and
Gasps.
I dropped my cheese plate and I came sprinting out of the kitchen down the hallway. I said, "What happened?" And they went, "There was a tit."
There was a boob.
And then I totally missed it. And
Half of a
they
boob.
didn't replay it. That's it. Okay, Alex. I got nothing else to say about Magic the Gathering or about Super Bowl halftime shows or about football. So I guess I'm just going to wrap this up
All right.
and I will talk to you next week or the week after. Probably the week after because I'm still dealing with the fucking bird flu outbreak at work. So, people, if you have backyard chickens and they get sick, don't bring it inside your house to help it recuperate. Just leave it be. Talk to you later.
I ain't gonna do this anymore. That's all for me. Goodbye.